How are you? How you been doing with everything going on?
It's been like a really busy last few weeks. Just ramping up to the album release, and also we recorded our like we were doing a live stream, so we had to like rehearse that and get it all together, which is a lot of effort. But yeah, it's finally done.
Yeah, it's been good. It's out and everyone's loving it, so very happy.
Are you guys currently out in Sydney right now, or Australia, or where are you guys currently in the world?
Yeah,
Sydney?
we're in Sydney.
We live in like not that it'll mean much, but we live in like the inner west suburbs, which is like kind of like 15 minutes from the downtown area, I guess you'd call it, or CBD. I don't know what in Canada if it's CBD or downtown.
Yeah.
But yeah, we live like close to the city in Sydney.
That's cool. No, I was just wondering because a few weeks ago I interviewed this Australian artist, Alex the astronaut, and we were laughing about the time zone difference. So I was wondering where you guys were. It's evening right now.
Yeah, it's like 11:30 a.m. So nice and early.
Yeah.
Feels good.
About 8:30 in Toronto. But yeah, before we get started for the interviews, let me introduce myself. My name is Jibril Osman. This platform is called Studio One. It's a platform where I interview international acts like yourself, acts across Canada, and acts in Toronto as well to really highlight, acts from the city where I'm from. So thank you guys so much for being on the platform.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, dude.
I know we briefly introduced ourselves, but before we begin, can you guys briefly introduce yourselves again?
So I'm Cosmo.
And together we are Cosmo's Midnight. We're twins from Sydney, Australia.
Perfect. So I know you guys grew up in Sydney. Can you tell me what it was like, growing up, and when did, music become more than a hobby for you guys? I know you're twin brothers, so you definitely guys shared a life together. So when did, individually, when did music become more than a hobby?
So growing up in Australia, it's definitely, I guess, like, because we hadn't really been anywhere in the world until like 5 years ago. We hadn't traveled outside of Australia. We weren't really aware of the bubble that Australia is, but it is a very isolated country, which I think kind of lends a little bit to the sort of, I don't know, like, I feel like isolation breeds creativity, and I feel like the music coming out of Australia has like a kind of a unique sound to it. But yeah, like, I guess for us, we realized that music could actually be a career for us when we were playing shows, and it wasn't just like little 50 people in like a side room. We were playing like theaters and stuff, and we're like, okay, this feels real legit now, and yeah, let's see how far we can take this.
And I know, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
So if you guys wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because like we both got stuff to say, but it's like, who says when?
I know.
Yeah, once we like started playing like theater side shows, and we felt like we could be self-sufficient off music. We didn't have to do any side jobs or anything. We're like, wow, I guess we can do this full time now. I mean, we could really like pursue music, and and once we started building more followers on all our platforms, and the streams kept coming in, it started feeling like a genuine income and career. So yeah. And back to the Australia thing, I feel like what Pat was touching on about being an isolated country, we're so far away from like the influences of other countries. I mean, obviously we have the internet and all that, but I feel that there's just this sense of communal sharing and togetherness in the music industry where there's not really much competition. I'd say it's like a very there's not much cliques and stuff. It's very much just everyone's willing to work together, and I think it's kind of like a unique environment for musicians to grow up in, which is very like healthy.
Yeah.
And being brothers, of course, the idea of pursuing music, it's a hard thing to accomplish and things like that. When you guys came together and you're like, hey, this is what we really want to do. How were those conversations? Was one more leaned onto the other, or have you guys been inseparable?
I feel
we I stumbled into
uni. Yeah, well, I was like, we were both going to university at the time. I was a bit further behind in my degree than Pat was, and we were just doing music as well. Studying and doing music, and eventually it became doing one less subject a semester, a bit more music, another less subject the next semester, and then suddenly, we were full-time musicians before we knew it. We kind of like, stumbled into the music as a career. We just did it for fun together. It was just something we really enjoyed to do. And as people came, then there was a demand to start playing shows. So we just, had to do it.
Never really, like, we kind of were just doing university and making music on the side, and we're just uploading our stuff to SoundCloud. And it just started getting, like, more and more traction, and we were like, we didn't really expect that. And then, our managers approached us after we did this remix ages ago for Flume, and they're like, do you have a manager? Do you have any more music? We're like, we're not managed. We don't have any more music. Like, we're just, this is just like a hobby.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, if you get some more music together, like, we'd love to have a chat. And then, so ever since then, we've been managed by Astral people, and they kind of look after us. And that's the story, more or less.
Touching on,
it was like not really like a eureka moment, like as much as I say other artists may have, but I feel like it's been like a kind of process of growth over time where we've matured more as people and as musicians, and like slowly pulled in more direction and found our alignment over time.
I feel like with this like record we just put out, like, it feels like we finally have like know what we want to do, we know where we're headed. And it's like, it feels like a real kind of like a statement as artists for us. Yeah, which is cool.
Before we dive into the album, we're definitely going to do that. On the idea of being isolated in Australia in this community, talk to me about how being artists from Australia. Talk to me about how important the internet is, because releasing music on SoundCloud and things like that, and getting yourselves out there. Talk to me about the scene in Australia and these new methods, the internet and releasing your records. How that became like a important part of like getting your music out there.
I feel like it was
you go. No.
Okay, I'll go. I feel like it was a mixture of the two. Like, before, Sydney had like a thriving nightlife, and then some laws came in that changed that and kind of shut down the local scenes. And back then it was a really good way to cut your teeth and get like your music out there and play some shows and kind of just expose yourself to a small like kind of cult following. And in combination with that and like an international cult following on the internet, it was kind of like possible to start this kind of undercurrent that was like could slowly spill over into what it is today for us. And I feel like now it's potentially harder for artists without any connections to like do this without that inbuilt.
It's hard to be grassroots now. I feel like SoundCloud as a platform is not as helpful as it used to be. It used to be like, it was very community driven, and it was all about bolstering each other, and it was very collaborative. But I don't think SoundCloud's really like that anymore. It's kind of just like moved into a sort of just streaming platform like Spotify, which is not to say that they've had to do that to survive, but like the thing that made SoundCloud unique was that element. And like, honestly, like Spotify and Apple Music just do the streaming better. So it's like, now it's just harder to be grassroots, I guess. So it's like, if you can't lean on that and you're just starting out, it's sort of hard to get your foot in the door. So I think we were really fortunate when we started to sort of have
the internet was in a really good place. Yeah, the internet was in a good place. We had the local scene to like put our music out into as well. It was kind of like a nice alignment in time for us to kind of put our stuff out there.
Yeah.
I know, winning, meeting your managers, winning the contest, things like that, really elevated you guys and pushed you forward. But for you guys, what moment do you guys have, if any, where you realize, this is really going to work? Was it a song that you released that it did really well, or was it even recently going overseas and doing shows?
Yeah, I think when we released Walk With Me, I think that was our first song that really like had some big numbers, and that was also our first record to go gold, I think. To get gold certification. And I think when that happened, we were like, okay, if we got one gold record, like, let's go for number 2. And then eventually we got History went gold as well. And then like, I think we've now got like 6 gold records. And I think that was just like, we would just like keep pursuing the next thing. It wasn't like, we're not going to rest on our laurels. It's just like, just keep moving forward and being excited about it. But I definitely think also when we went overseas and like even playing to, I think the first time we went to America, like we played some small rooms, like we played, but then we played some like really iconic places too, like the Roxy in LA. And I feel like playing those shows are really affirming, and like realizing that we could come overseas and actually people would like to come and see us play, which is awesome. And like playing Rough Trade in New York. I don't think we've actually played in Toronto yet. We've played in Vancouver, and I've played in Montreal, but yeah, no Toronto yet. I think we were probably planning on coming that way before COVID kicked in, but yeah, alas, that sort of happened.
I also feel like there was this moment in 2018, I think, where we were doing our first album, our previous album tour, and we were doing these shows, and we'd never done shows in these scale venues before, and we were just like so anxious, we're like, oh man, this is like an 1,800 cap venue, we're not going to sell it out, blah blah blah. And then we ended up doing like 5 in the one city, we ended up doing like 6,000 tickets in Sydney, and we're like never expected to ever do that. We were just, because like the year before we were doing like 500 capacity rooms, and suddenly it had gone tenfold, and we were just blown away. We didn't know where it came from. There was no like metric to see where it came from. We were just like, oh, I guess. Yeah, it's just like, I guess kind of like hit a certain point now.
Yeah, like from the ground you could just like feel it. But yeah, sometimes not everything is like tangible in like metrics and numbers. Like you can't just like look at like
a Spotify graph or the SoundCloud graph, or monthly listeners have gone up, or like this kind of stuff. Like sometimes you just gotta sell a show and be like, okay,
see it.
Now we know.
Yeah. Now going with this, new record, new album. Individually, what does it mean to you guys? I think you guys said it kind of feels like you just said kind of arrived, but what does it mean? And another thing as well, Pat, I heard you were singing a lot more on the record. Talking about what that feels like.
So this album, I feel like it's a lot more personal, and like, it's definitely more. It's an album like from me and Cos. I feel like our last album was a lot more kind of bordering on a mixtape sort of vibe, just with how collaborative it was. Almost every song had a feature, or even 2 features on one song. And that was awesome. Like I really love writing with other people, but I felt like for this record, we really wanted it to come from us, and like, it would be our statement and like our message as well, like with the lyrics. And we just wanted to have all that control over sort of the process, the meaning process, everything from beginning to end. So if this album was, weirdly, we thought it was going to take a long time, because I'm not really familiar with songwriting and top lining, but once I got a few songs under my belt, it just like ended up coming way faster than anything we'd done before. So it ended up just kind of becoming really natural. Like my vocals were sitting pretty nicely on the stuff. Like we'd all become more prolific as like performers. Like Cos is really good at bass guitar now, and he plays guitar and I play keys, whereas on our last record everything was just done with mouse and keyboard. Everything was like clicked in, and then we'd kind of like mess stuff up and like try to like J Dilla-fy everything and like just unquantize everything a little bit to make it feel more natural, because that's what Dillia's did, because it's on the MPD and you can't like make that sound good. You have to like fake the anti-quantization. Anyway, so for our new record, it was like everything was more jammed in, and like instead of going with this really like high precision stuff, it was just like just jam it in and like see how it feels, and just kind of
going off like of feeling
go off how it feels rather than like stressing about thinking it over.
And with that, when you guys release EPs and albums, things like that, do you guys feel this like nervousness when you release the record, or what's the sense with you guys? Because it's how it is.
I feel like
is there a sense of relief? Or
over time, we've like slowly, But I feel like we've gotten a bit more confident as we've become more confident as songwriters. We've become more confident in our music as a result. It's like it's not necessarily like an overzealous or anything like that. It's more just that we feel like we're writing music that's more like true to what we want, and we feel like is more of an extension of our personalities. So over time, like people that are drawn to that will continue to like that in a way. So it's like, as with this new album came out, I was like, well, this feels like the most genuine we've been as musicians. I feel like people are gonna relate to that better. So this album, as much as like the tension is there, I feel a little less worried than before when we were making music that was a bit more like, where we weren't necessarily sure where we were in a music sense at that point. Like back in maybe 2014 when we were really SoundCloud based.
when we were on SoundCloud, like SoundCloud is like very sort of like you follow the wave, the trend, and like it's very producery. And I felt like with this album, we were kind of just like consciously like moving away from making music that was like highly technical, like super polished and technical, and like trying to impress other producers. But instead, we're just like, how's this going to make people feel when they listen to it on like a really basic human fundamental level? And we just wanted to make music that was just totally about inspiring like feelings, rather than just like, damn, that synth is dope, or like that drum beat is EQ'd to just perfection. We just wanted to like make music that just that people would enjoy.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. And you know, with the year 2020 and so many things going on, do you guys think that you may have had time to like reflect on your careers in music, and that kind of, I guess, helped kind of make you guys realize what kind of music you wanted to make? Because it sounds like this album is really as reflective as it can be in what you really want it to be. Do you think that with quarantine and things like that, it helped you guys reflect on that?
I definitely feel
Absolutely.
like with like the title track, like Yesteryear, which is all about kind of like looking back and reflecting. This whole album is about like looking back and absorbing all those kind of like life experiences and like formative moments that lead to where you are. And that's like not just music, that's just like every experience you have, really. And I feel like it's like, wow, my train of thought just disappeared. You know where I was going with that, cuz?
Yeah, allow me to step in. Basically, just that like this album and like the time we had off.
That's right.
We've been touring somewhat relentlessly for the last three years or so, and this break we've had for the last 7 months maybe.
Yeah, 6, 7
our
months.
last show was in Indonesia in maybe February or March, and then that was it. Like not until now. And honestly, like I felt kind of just like a bit of an internal sigh of relief. I was like, I'm having my first real break in years, and this is going to be a time where we can like really like knuckle down and finish the album, because we had been writing the album whilst touring, but that's always like a hard like balancing act to juggle. And now that we had this time, we could really like look back and be like, what have we written? What are we proud of? What are we most proud of in our catalog? Like, what do we want to take forward from songs as old as Snare and Walk With Me and stuff off our last album, like Polarize, Get to Know, that we feel like that feed into our new and current style. So it was kind of like a moment to kind of just debrief what has happened over the last 3 years.
It's like a lot of like decompressing as well. It was just like a big sigh of relief, is I guess, or like not a sigh of relief, but like a breath. Like it was just a pause.
Yeah,
and we could kind of just think together, like what are we doing? Like what do we want to do? And
but I guess like the album is a bit. It's a lot of like. It's reflecting on where you've come as a person and as a musician, and how those kind of both are intrinsically tied. Like you can't have growth as a person without growing as a musician, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And of course, with COVID and shows being canceled, things like that. How have you guys been, coping with that in terms of like collaborations, or just how is this new way of connecting, been for you guys?
I think we did like our first in-person club like session like 2 weeks ago or something. And ever since like COVID started, we haven't done any writing with other people. It's been like super like although that said, we did have like for example like Idaho, like a friend Joey, Young Frank, he's an artist called Young Franco. He came over and we were playing demos to each other, and he had this drum beat, and that inspired the whole of Idaho. So that was one other time. But as a whole, we've definitely not really been doing much writing with other people. So I think it's partly why.
At least not in person. Like there's been a bit of like via correspondence, been like, hey, do you reckon you could do some BVs for me on this track? Like that kind of stuff. But nothing that's like been like a really strong collaborative moment, just because I feel like it's hard to have strong collaborative moments over the internet. It's a lot easier to do that in person, where you can kind of feed off each other's energy at the time. And I feel like it's been, as much as it's been kind of difficult, it's also been really good to like try and be more self-sufficient during this time as well, and like really hone in on like on flexing new muscles and getting better. As Pat as a singer, and me as a writer with my instruments that I've only started learning in the last year or so. So yeah, it's been kind of good, honestly. Like as much as it's been a strange time, we haven't been able to do shows, and there's it's been a hit, I guess, a bit for that. Like, when that's a lot of income for artists is from shows, but it's been just a good time for us to kind of train up as well.
Yeah. And usually, when I get to near the end of interviews, I'll ask an artist, how's the rest of the year looking? You got shows and all these things coming up, but with COVID, that kind of, So, but with you guys, you guys have been together on this journey, through and through. What are some things you've learned about yourselves through this journey? Of course, this year has been really reflective, but what are some things you've learned about yourself that has improved yourself, whether it's musically or just as humans?
I think like again, like how like music and like your personality is sort of tied up. Like before like we were really doing live shows or just music at all. Like I remember at university, like I had to do public speaking, and I was just like a nervous wreck. I couldn't talk in front of like 5 people I didn't know without just getting nervous. And just with how music like intrinsically forces you out of your comfort zone again and again with like releasing music or performing live, talking to people. Like even this interview right now, I would have just been like, oh god, I don't know what to do. Just would have been like so nervous. I think music really has been like such a growth for me, not just musically. Like it's really helped me come out of my shell and just become the person I am today, which is I'm really grateful for all the opportunities that I've had as a musician, because it's kind of
for everything. It's like we were both relatively sheltered individuals. We grew up in like a nice part of Sydney, and and we didn't leave Australia for a very long time, and music gave us the opportunity to travel and see the world. I'd never traveled really before, like until I even made a bit of money from music to go on my first holiday when I was 20 years old. And
like we legit hadn't even flown like been on a flight until we flew to play a gig in another city. So we were like that sort of sheltered. Like we hadn't been out of our state. Our first flight was to Adelaide to play a show with this really awesome artist, Talkie Monster, and that was the very first gig we ever did outside of Sydney, and that was like a huge moment for us. And like again, now I'm like used to flying and that, but I don't think I really would have gotten
at that time. We never would have,
unless it was for music.
Flying.
And
just like many new experiences, like you're kind of forced into and like grow from, because like a lot of like the music tour life is kind of like a type. Not that it's a bad hardship, but it's a type of hard, like a mental fortitude test. Like you'll sleep 2 hours a night and you'll go to different cities, different countries every day. If you're doing like Asia, for example, we'll be like in Thailand one day and then we'll be in Korea the next day, and you have been on 3 hours sleep and you're like, I feel a bit like mentally like exhausted. You feel like your mental health deteriorating over the course of like a tour like that. And having those moments kind of help you build you as a person and like become stronger. And we never would have had those moments from the comfort of just, being in Sydney and never having the opportunities to travel and go outside and have these new experiences.
And on a final note, definitely want to say thanks so much for you guys taking the time out for this interview. It's been absolutely great. Congrats on this new album.
Dude.
On a final note, individually, what does this new album mean to you? Individually, Pat and Cosmo.
You go first, Pat.
For this album, for me, it kind of just feels like an arrival. I feel like for me, it's just with this finally getting my voice onto music, it's just been such a big step up for me. And even just performing live, it's gonna be such an, I don't know, it's just a totally new experience. It's really like exposing yourself. It's a vulnerability that I've never really felt before. And I think it's just like it's a big kind of growth moment for me. And I'm still kind of, there's like even just reacting to people's responses to the album is just like, it hits really different now that I'm singing on the music. It's like a very, I don't know how to say it, because like before I felt like I was kind of experiencing the track alongside whatever artist we were writing with. Like it felt like it was a very collaborative thing. And when they're like responding to the vocals, like I know they're responding to this artist we've worked with, but now it's like this whole thing is just me. They're responding to me entirely. So it's a very, it's definitely, it's like confronting, but like super rewarding as well.
For me, I'd probably say this album for me is probably the most I've felt like Pat and I have seen eye to eye musically. Like we've always met in the middle with our music, and but it just feels like this time has been the most like complementary and harmonious kind of
like
combination of us.
It was
of
like a
what we
bit
do.
of compromise. It was a bit of compromise, like
Yeah.
before, and also like before, I feel like I would do the majority of like the mixing and like producing and like final stuff, but with now Cos like doing so much performance into the songs, it's like it's so much more. Yeah, like Cos said, like it's meeting in the middle. Like, and I'm not even mixing the music anymore. Like we just kind of write these songs together, and it's super just it's like symbiotic as it gets.
Yeah.
And then it goes off to our mixing engineer, and then he does it. So it's like we don't have to overthink anything, and like there's no compromise. It just feels really natural now. It's like it's honestly in a really good place at the moment.
Oh, that's amazing. Again, guys, thank you so much for taking the time out for this interview. Congrats on the new album. Can't wait till the world spins again and you guys come to Toronto and I get to see the show live.
Yeah, we'll come around to Toronto.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, there's like some people there, like a lot of artists in Toronto that I really like. It's like Ryan Hemsworth. I'm pretty sure, who's that? Like Ramzoid's from, I don't know if he's from Vancouver or Toronto. But yeah, like
Tennyson.
A lot of the people that we met in Sound, like Tennyson, I love the artists we met back in the SoundCloud day.
Yeah,
I love
they are Canada, but I don't know if they're all Toronto.
Yeah.
Ryan Hemsworth, I actually had a chance to interview him a while back. He's from based Montreal. He's really good.
Montreal.
Other side.
Well, I know Bad But Not Good are from Toronto.
Yeah, they're really good.
And they're dope. We actually played it, like we were in Korea at the same time. We played like a few festivals, like with them around Asia, and it was just, they were the most lovely guys.
Yeah.
But one day we'll be back in Canada and it'll be awesome.
Sure, and I'll be waiting. All right.
Thanks, man. All right, peace.
Peace. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, dude. Have a good night.
You too. Later.
Catch ya.
All right, bye-bye.